Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Ian Spandow. He's a seasoned enablement leader and sales trainer, and we'll learn from him practical lessons on bold leadership, overcoming setbacks, and using empathy to drive success drawn from decades in high-stake sales and life-changing personal turns. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thank you, AJ. It's great to see you.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Ian. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to learn from you. We'll talk about how one can lead boldly and with lots of ethics and everything else. We'll talk about all that. And before that, let's talk about your journey, your background, your stories, so that people know who they are listening to.
Well, thank you, AJ. Well, I'm from Dublin, Ireland, but I've been living in California for the last 15 years. So I was a technology guy from when I was a teenager to today, and also a dog lover. So nowadays, what I do is I train and enable sales professionals within the technology industry, specifically in Silicon Valley. But I also run a dog rescue called Spandow House Dog Rescue, where we rehome and rehabilitate dogs in need and find great forever homes for them. And I'm very happy to be on your show today, AJ, because I have a special place in my heart for India. So having visited there and having run teams out of Bangalore and New Delhi, I'm very happy to be with you.
Thank you, Ian. And talking of India, obviously I can see you risk your career for someone from India, regarding this H1B recruit from India. That was some time ago, but I'm sure that story is very much fresh in your mind because, of all that you just tell us a bit about that. Though you made, lots of news during those days, but I want to hear for the audience so that, they know who they are again, listening to his special relationship with India and fighting for something that is right, which is so rare in today's cases in workplaces.
Yeah. So for half of my career, I worked in Europe. And in Europe, we have laws that say that you cannot pay a minority any less than you would pay a regular national, right? So I can't pay somebody on my team less just because of the color of their skin. But when I moved to Redwood Shores with Oracle, I was promoted from Europe to the US, and I led a coaching team out of Oracle in California. They wanted me to pay our Indian employees a lot less than they were paying the American employees. And, I had a problem with that. So I wrote a letter to the HR department and I said, no, I'm not going to pay an Indian guy less than a white guy. And they fired me the next day. So it turned out that you're probably familiar with the L1 visa too, which means that you can only work for one company. So when you have that type of visa, you really don't have any choice in what salary or what conditions you work under. You either agree with it or you get kicked out of the country. And the next day they tried to kick me out of the country.
Absolutely. So it was a long fight, difficult fight for you, Ian, for standing up to what is right?
Yeah, 4 years with the ACLU, which is a civil liberties union here in the USA. I think with 22 depositions from people who had the same problems, being underpaid because of their minority status or their visa status. But ultimately, big corporations, they have better lawyers than a little Irish guy does. And, they fought us with tooth and nail. But actually, the Indian community in San Francisco was very kind to me, and they gave me some awards, and they were very thankful and kind. And some of the big corporations changed their hiring practices after my lawsuit because they realized that, basically it wasn't right.
Absolutely. So how did you then rebuild your life after all that experience and seeing the state of leadership today? What are your views on that? Very few people uh, we see standing up for, every day we see things, one thing or the other happening. And with artificial intelligence coming in, leadership is still in crisis, great resignation, quiet quitting. People are talking of toxic leadership, toxic workplaces. Means, do you see more like people like you in the workplaces, Ian? How should we look at that?
Well, I think it depends on where you are in the world. So I've delivered training in over 30 countries. And many of them have similarities, and people in Europe in general, and my experience in the Middle East and in Asia has been that people are very family orientated. Friendships and family relationships are incredibly important to them. Here in the United States, it's quite a bit different. And I don't judge anybody, AJ. I don't think badly of people, but the truth is that most people are just interested in themselves and their family. And I personally don't have any children, so maybe I can't identify with this, but most people just interested in themselves and those very close to them, and they don't really have a bigger picture about happy workforces or productive employees or good leadership, because ultimately finance is the king here in America. I ran a company for 12 years, and my goal was to have a company that ran for a long time and employed people and kept people employed. But the goal over here in America really is just, how quickly can I sell this company for $5 billion? Like, how quickly can I merge with another venture capital backed company and take my money away? So I think it's different where you go in the world. My experience in India, for instance, was that people wanted to build businesses that lasted, right? So it wasn't get rich quick. It was, hey, we take the steps and we create an office atmosphere, and then we train people. And then, ideally in 5 or 10 years, we'll have a really good company. But 5 years is a long time in America to own anything, right? They want to have it sold and run off with the money and as quick as they can.
Absolutely. So, Ian, how do you train with this sort of clarity about things? How do you train people in leadership and sales? Means, that is it a easy job for you? And tell
No,
us about what is it and how do you do that?
no, it's definitely not an easy job. But what I have found is that if you can connect with the personal ambitions or the personal goals of people. So, for instance, I would ask some of the executives who I've coached who, they make a lot of money, right? But then I asked them, well, what are you actually going to spend this money on? What's it for? Like, why are you doing all this? And amazingly, a lot of them don't have a good answer. Their answer is, I just want to have as much money in my bank account as possible. And I say, yeah, but for what? Like, for who? If you didn't have to work, it's a question I ask all of my coachees. I say, imagine you won the lottery tomorrow. Well, if you didn't have to go to work, what would you do? What would make you happy in the day? Right? You can't play tennis or cricket all day long. It's like you probably want to do something that's going to challenge you in some way or give you some kind of reward. And most of us, maybe you and me, AJ, we're working so hard all the time to just pay the bills, right? To pay the rent, right? That we're not thinking about, well, if I didn't have to do this, what would actually make me happy?
Absolutely. So, how would you like to tell leaders, especially young leaders, Ian, about looking at things what makes them happy? Should their happiness be about themselves, or should their happiness be also about people and things around them?
Yeah, I think that the assumption that most of us maybe make because of media the way it is right now is that success is only measured in how much profit you made. But there's two types of income, AJ. There's financial income, and then there's spiritual income, right? And by spiritual income, I mean I rescue dogs. This is my book, Rescuing Dogs and Salespeople. And for every time that a dog gets adopted that had a terrible life before, I feel rich. Now it's not rich in my bank account, but I sleep in really well every night, and I get the love of unconditional love of a dozen dogs every single morning when I wake up. So that to me is worth far more than any other kind of reward.
Wonderful. So in terms of your career, own career, in from tech to coming about animal rescue, dog rescue, tell us about that. Means how did that turn into? Was it a clear thing that okay, you wanted to leave that, move towards this thing, or it just happened? I want to understand that career trajectory for you, Ian, for the
Yeah,
audience.
almost by accident, AJ. So I've been a dog lover all my life. My grandmother was a breeder. She bred Rhodesian Ridgebacks. So I've always loved dogs. But when I was working in Silicon Valley, for the first time, I worked at a company that allowed dogs in the office. This was a company called MongoDB. And I went on my first day there. There was 2 or 3 different dogs just lying around by the desk at the people who were working there. And I said, well, this is wonderful. You can bring your dog to work. So I went home to my wife that night and I said, let's get a dog because I want to take him to work with me. And at the time we weren't, we had an apartment in San Francisco, which didn't allow animals. So I thought, well, maybe if we're just fostering and not technically owning, maybe we can slip it under the radar. And 250 dogs later that we've slipped under the radar, right? So the very first dog, his name is Harry. He's actually the dog on the cover of my book. And he was our first foster fail. We fell in love with him. He became a permanent part of our household. And he has welcomed all of the other dogs. Like I say, I think we're at 243 at the moment. So dogs that we've pulled from, either shelters or people have surrendered to us, or several of them I just found on the side of the road just looking for food or something like that, and put them in my car and take them home, and then we get the veterinary care that they need and the shots and all that kind of vaccinations, and then we list them and we find adopters to adopt them. So it was by accident initially, but now it's become, like I say, the most rewarding part of my role. I still train and enable salespeople. I'm a consultant in Silicon Valley, and I work with different technology organizations. But my real passion, honestly, if I could do it all day, AJ, would just be to be with the dogs.
Right. So, but it needs a lot of energy, time, and money also, Ian, to take care of so many dogs. And you also talk about high risk dogs. Means what does this mean for a common person, and how do you manage all these things? Where do you get all the support from?
Well, mostly we're self-funded. So my wife is a nurse and she works in the children's hospital in San Francisco. I fund it via my work in the technology industry, but we do get we get some donations. Mostly when people adopt dogs from us, they will donate food or they will donate something like that. But we're not a large rescue. We work on special cases rather than volume. So we take the hardest dogs, the ones that have the worst backstory, the worst abuse. And sometimes, we had one dog from Azerbaijan that we flew from Azerbaijan to America, and we had her for over a year to help her to recover before such time as she got adopted. And now she's the happiest dog in the world working on a farm. But we mostly fund it ourselves, to answer your question, AJ, with some food and supply donations occasionally.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your book, Ian. When did you get this idea of this book? What have you got into? What have you written into this book?
So I traveled, like I mentioned, to 32 different countries delivering training over my career. And in each of these countries, I'm Irish. So the Irish, we're good storytellers, right? So in each of these different countries, I would tell stories about how, this particular sale or this particular process did or didn't work. And people would come up to me afterwards and say, hey, Ian, you should write a book. And I heard this so many times. And I said, yeah, maybe one day, and I'm when I'm retired or something like that, But then it came up, we had COVID, as you remember, which put everybody back to being at home most of the time, and very much all the travel that I used to do. I used to travel sort of 1 to 2 weeks of the month, and all of a sudden I wasn't traveling at all. So gave me a lot of extra time. So I started writing in, I think, 2021, or just, maybe a year into COVID or something like that, when we were all locked down. And did take me a couple of years to get it all down. But I'm a mutt, and the dog is called Memoir of a Mutt because, like some of the dogs that we have, I have a French mother, a Zimbabwean father, a German name, and an Irish accent. And my wife is from Texas. So, I'm like what you would call a mutt, right? So I don't have any real loyalty or particular breeding. I'm a citizen of the universe, or of the planet. I feel just as comfortable in Bangalore eating curry as I do eating pizza in Chicago, or eating box tea back in Ireland. So maybe that helped a little bit, right? So we didn't have a particularly pure breeding in any way. And so I appreciate different cultures. Je parle français. Ich habe ein oder zwei Wörter auf Deutsch. Mit einem Nachnamen kam Spandow. I love languages, AJ. I speak 4 of them, with Gaelic, Irish being the one that we have to learn when we're children in Ireland. And then just a passion for communicating and meeting people of different cultures.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is where you see you are a man of the universe. That's why you talk about treating humans and animals with compassion and care. So tell us a bit about this philosophy of yours. What is it that you want to tell to the world, especially in today's time? When things are moving much away from these 2 words.
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing with not just humans but animals is to make sure that people have dignity. So in sales, as an example, sometimes you or I might ask a question that's a rookie question, right? It's like a basic level question. And the worst salespeople I know, they'll judge you for that, right? And they'll be like, "Oh, AJ, that's such a basic question. Look, you should really know the answer." But I train people to preserve dignity. So what they should say in that situation is, "Hey, AJ, you know what? I've heard that a bunch of times. Many, many people make the same mistake that you did. It's a very easy confusion to have." And then I feel the same about dogs, right? So we need to give them their dignity, right? So we have dogs that are livestock guardian dogs, and somebody's had them in an apartment or a flat, right? That's not dignified for them. They want to be out there protecting your home, protecting your livestock, protecting your field. And if they're just in a little tiny apartment in a cage, they can't do that. And when I go to the dog pound where I take most of the dogs that we rescue from, they change so immediately from when you take them out of the dog pound and then you put them in your car and you take them to a home and you give them food and love and what. They completely change because you change their environment. And I feel the same in sales teams and in leadership. The best leaders I've worked with and the people I know who are superb at that, excuse me, they'll create a great environment for their team, right? It'll be a positive, nurturing, warm, supportive environment. And in many ways, dogs, they're pack animals. They behave in a pack. And companies and employees, they do that too sometimes, right? If this is the way everybody does it here at our office in Mumbai, then maybe that's just the way I should do it too. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right environment, right? So depending on the demands of the situation or the task at hand, you have to create an environment that makes people comfortable and safe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there is so much to learn about all this from you, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals, and dog lovers and animal lovers who talk about humanity as well as compassion they will want to connect with you, what is the best way for them to do so?
Well, we are on all the normal social media. So Spandow House Dog Rescue is on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. I, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, and many of my Indian colleagues, actually, I have a huge amount of connections in India. So I'll be happy to share this podcast with them. And our website is spandowhouse.com, just like you might guess. But social media has been really useful for what we do, not just in the dog rescue, but also with, the commercial world. I read somewhere, or I saw a report that said that if somebody you know or you're connected with, if they make a recommendation to you, for instance, like for a restaurant, you're 3 times more likely to go than if you saw a commercial on television or on the radio or something, right? Because it was somebody you knew already went to that restaurant and said, oh, I had a great meal there. So it's the same, honestly, with the dog rescue business. When people publish and post reviews and say, hey, we adopted this dog, it was terrific, it was trained, it's become a great part of our family now, that really helps us. So all the, what they say, likes and shares, right, and comments on social media, that helps spread the word.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much, AJ. Take care.
You too.